good evening, wherever in the world you may be. This is me, Sandeep Unnithan, Editor-in-Chief Chakra News, and I'm joined once again on Saturday morning here by General PR Shankar of Gunner's Shot, and of course my friend Advaita Kala. Welcome to this very interesting collaboration. We've been doing it for a few weeks now. It's a very, very interesting format where we are talking to three people from very different, very diverse backgrounds on the raging issues of the week. And the raging issue of this week happens to be Nepal. And we've watched with horror and dismay as Gen Zs, Nepal's young people, took to the streets. They've torn down government buildings, they've attacked government officials. Nepal is not on fire now, fortunately. It's got a elected prime minister who was sworn in, Sushila Karki, but our hands are full. We're going to talk about why Nepal burnt in the first place and what lies ahead. But not just Nepal, because let's not forget, Nepal and India are almost joined at the hip. And what affects Nepal affects India as well. So without much ado, I want to start by asking you this. General Shankar, Nepal on fire, you believe it was a conspiracy or this was a spontaneous public outpouring?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Morning Advaita and morning Sandeep. A very interesting topic for this week. Nepal, it's our most immediate neighbor. It sits on our heartland. Whatever happens in Nepal touches the Gangetic plains. After all, we share the Ganges to a large extent. Well, at the outset, what's the latest situation? Mrs. Sushila Karki has been sworn in as the Prime Minister, and we'll hope a lot happens. Her swearing in of the Prime Minister tells you the story actually. She's the ex-Chief Justice of Nepal who's been campaigning for corruption for a long time. And the Gen Zs, who are supposed to be the motivation behind this entire agitation and putting Nepal on fire, right, have chosen her because of her anti-corruption thing. And one of the hashtags which went viral was Nepo Kids. Right. So if you see all this put together, you find that the rampant corruption in Nepal, the lack of opportunity for the youth, and they saw themselves caught in a situation. Plus, of course, the domino effect of what happened in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and all that would have had. But fundamentally, it is something, the internal situation, right? And why did this internal situation come? It came due to a lot of factors. There are ideological factors, there are ethnic factors, there are political factors, right? And because I think the route ahead lies in identifying the factors which led to this situation. So I'll highlight a few. Of course. One is the country was divided. It is a major fracture. Politically, KP Sharma Oli and his Maoists were oriented towards China. The people were oriented towards India because their cultural connect, their livelihood, their remittances, economically, everything, they were deep connections with India. Whereas with China, they had nothing except loans and, BRI and all that. So that fracture was there. Then you have this problem, of ideological fracture also within Nepal, which was happening. There were communists who were there, and then there was an issue of monarchy, which is also remnants of monarchy, and then Hinduism. Really speaking, the majorities are Hindus out there. Hinduism and communism don't go together very well, except in certain cases. And they're all failed experiments. So you see all these things coming, to the fore, and causing a situation where people had no hope. And then, of course, Nepal has no industry, no way of progressing. In fact, their only industries were, tourism and taxes on import duties and things like that. and their biggest asset was power, which they were not able to realize or export.
Right.
So I think a multitude of all these factors uh, led to this. There is also the problem of their troubled past, their Maoist struggle, which went on for 10 years. During the Maoist struggle, they had this, massacre where the royal family was, finished off. The new monarch couldn't balance everything like the old monarch could.
Yeah.
And then the post-monarchy situation where the Maoists came up, and then it took them 8 years to come to a, constitution. And the constitution which they gave themselves led to a parliament which could never be dominated by one single party. It always had to be a coalition, right? Because I mean, for those of you who don't know, Nepal has got a constitution which gives them one out of 275 seats in their Congress or the Lok Sabha equivalent. 165 seats are by direct election, 110 are by proportional representation. So, which means no party can ever get a majority out there.
Majority.
Right? And they had unstable governments and things like that. So, it had to happen. It just got accelerated by KP Sharma and banning social media apps and all that.
Nipo
And
kids.
this,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's just that.
Yeah.
It's not anything to do with CIA and all that nonsense which people are
Yeah.
talking about.
The conspiracy theories that we thought,
Is
the
all,
timing of
yeah,
the fall, KP Sharma comes
nothing.
back from Beijing, and suddenly the spontaneous protests. But Advaita,
No,
I'm right now.
yeah,
I'm in
please.
Wali, and I'm in a building that was constructed by the House of Scindias, which is now run by the BSF, of course, the Border Security Force. And the Scindias have had extensive contacts with the royal family of Nepal. So, in a sense, I feel a certain connect from where I am speaking right now. Uh, the Scindias, of course, of several. Rajmata Vijayaraja Scindia was from Nepal, and that connect is always there. That kind of talks about the very deep people-to-people connect that we have with Nepal, which is very different from that we have with other countries. So initially there was this thing that it was, of course, there was a foreign hand. There was the timing of all of this. These protests were orchestrated, staged. Of course, we did wonder at the similarities between the protests in Nepal and what happened in Bangladesh. Literally, we thought it was the same playbook, and Sri Lanka also. But Advaita, you're a social media personality yourself. You're a film personality. This thing of social media, the fact that how it's triggered many of these of our anxieties, like General Shankar mentioned, there's rampant unemployment, there's corruption, there's very little foreign investment, and of course, uh, very little industry in Nepal. And you have a population that is completely hooked onto social media. I was looking at the statistics. There were reports that have been done in Nepal, and literally, social media is like oxygen for the people of Nepal. It's not just for communication and entertainment, but it's also a source of news for them. While of course everything else is there, all the causes are all genuine and legitimate. But there's also this aspect of social media, this addiction to social media. You see that as a major problem when you're looking at India. We are very similar in a sense. We may have our issues as well. Do you think social media kind of weaponizes this?
Oh, no doubt about it. I think it weaponizes it around the world, not just in Nepal. And I would argue that we are kind of obsessed with social media everywhere, not just in Nepal.
Yeah.
I lived in Nepal as a teen, 5 years,
Oh,
and that was during the
yeah.
monarch. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
that was during Shri Pach, who was the slain King Birendra at that point of
Right.
time. And Nepal has always been kind of very secluded into to a Himalayan kingdom, surrounded by
Yeah.
the Himalayas, little protected. It was very much I'm talking about the 80s here, of course. It was very much a place where, there was a certain cosmopolitanism because at a time during the Cold War, because of Everest, and a lot of the tourists who used to come and the mountaineers who used to come. So even though it shared a lot of similarities with India, it was in its temperament and its culture. In that sense, there was a certain, awareness of the wider world,
Right.
which I used to, at that point, when I used to compare it with us, because obviously for me, home was India, but I was living there, I would find
Yeah.
Nepal far more global in its outlook in that sense. This is back in the 80s. And then, of course, you had the communists come in and the Maoists. And, I remember in my house, they were walking the boundary wall armed.
You mean the Maoists?
Yes, 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 yes. I was
Oh,
my parents and my younger sister were there. I was in India at the time. So,
right.
the one thing I want to really say is this kind of, street protest and
Hmm.
uh, outpouring is not very new to Nepal.
Okay.
It has happened in the past. This time we live in the age of 24/7 TV and social media, so it's of course much more visible to us. But like I was saying, back in that time, like what, nearly 30 odd years ago, this was what was happening. And people were scared. Ordinary people were scared, especially Indians were scared at that point,
Hmm.
because there was a lot of resentment towards Indians as well. So this has happened. What you're seeing this time around, Sandeep, is here is a generation that has come of age in the time of social media. So they are
Right.
digital natives, right?
Hmm.
So they are digital natives. They're not like us who had to adapt to the new world. They've been raised in it. They're also a generation that has been born into a democracy. Please
Hmm.
remember, Nepal was not a democracy 20 odd years ago. It was still a
Right.
monarchy till the royal family.
2008 is when the king renounced and went into exile. Right. That's just 17
Exactly.
years. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a generation that was born into a democracy, gained awareness during a democracy, uh, was in a sense psychologically very different from predecessors. Because if you were born into a monarchy, you grew up with this belief, and I saw this, that the king was divine and he
Right.
had the absolute right to rule. Whether you believed it or not, that was pretty much what everyone said, what was taught in schools, in colleges, what was the dialogue. So these kids have really been born into a system wherein they have understood freedoms, they have experienced freedoms. They do not necessarily hanker back on that, divine right of people to rule or be in the place that they need to
Right.
be. They're deeply influenced by trends around the world. So
Hmm.
Nepo babies is a trend that really took hold of them, because you
Right.
had a situation wherein uh, children of the political elite were living very, very lavish lifestyles. And remember,
Right.
Nepal has gone through some devastating natural calamities
Yes.
also.
Earthquakes, floods, all of that. Yes.
And the poverty is still very prevalent. It's still a poor country. So this really grated on that generation. Now I would say it's very different. In Bangladesh also, it was corruption, dynastic privilege. In
Hmm.
Sri Lanka, it was similar, dynastic privilege. Again, ire directed at families. This trend you see in South Asia, and that is because we do have a system, a public system, wherein dynastic privilege is front and center. Where we've
Hmm.
been fortunate in India is that we had someone like Prime Minister Modi come and channel that anger towards dynastic privilege into the
Hmm.
vote, as opposed
Right.
to the streets. And I think this is very significant. We shouldn't underestimate it, because you see this anti-nepo baby syndrome in even in Bollywood. You saw it in
Yeah.
politics, you see it in Bollywood. So, I think we were fortunate because this got channeled through the vote, and we were able to address it through democratic means. Because
Hmm.
remember, we are also a very young population, and that resentment is there. It's hard for it not to be there. So, this is really how I'm reading this particular situation at the present time.
Right, right. Absolutely fascinating insight, Advaita. You know, the fact that Nepal, as you mentioned, is a very young country. More than 50% of Nepal, by the way, is under the age of 25. That's a very, very young country. There are younger countries in the region. I mean, Afghanistan, I think, is about 21. The median age there is 21. It's ridiculously young. And you know the fact, like you mentioned, there are no opportunities, and there's frustration, there's unemployment, there's corruption, and I think uh, whoever had been posting all those reels, I mean, did someone not tell them about the keeping those reels private, whatever they were doing? That's the very least they could have done. But the kind of outpouring of outrage, General Shankar, it's something that we haven't really seen even in Bangladesh and in Sri Lanka for that matter. The crowds in Sri Lanka, if you look at it, they were far better. They were very well mannered, disciplined. They did get into government buildings and all that. They did chase out their leaders, but they didn't indulge in the kind of arson and destruction of public property that we saw in Nepal. I mean, is this a cause of concern in the fact that, like Advaita mentioned, of course, there's a lot of anger, there's frustration, but in India, we're able to channelize that anger. There are safety valves, right? You hate a party, you hate a particular person. You just have to wait for 5 years, and you can change the government. You can basically exercise your vote, and that's something that's really important. What is it that Nepal really needs to do now? You're looking at a new prime minister. I mean, I think she's got probably one of the worst jobs in the world right now. You have arsonists in the street, and you have the weight of the expectations on your shoulders, and the world is literally watching you. Beijing is watching, New Delhi is watching, Washington is watching. What's the challenge before Sushila Karki in the next couple of days, Jan Shankar?
At the outset, she's a brave lady to have
Right.
taken on this onerous task. And she's a committed lady and passionate and a true, daughter of Nepal. That much we must give her. And I think, and we wish her well also. I mean, Nepal's happiness and progress and stability, a lot we derive from that. If Nepal is well and off, we are also well and off. But having said that, things ahead are going to be very, very rough. Let me put it absolutely upfront. Why? Their constitution is dead as of
Right.
now. They had a constitution which they took 8 years to make. After making this constitution for 8 years, it didn't work for them. The parliament has not worked for them. It's gone. In fact, her very appointment is largely, if you go by the constitution, it's not constitutional because the Supreme Court judge can't hold the post of a prime minister.
Right.
That's the first thing. But her goodwill shines through. I heard one of her interviews where she said, "Look, I'm not a politician. I'll come. The Gen Z has asked me to step in. I'll do that, and we'll work to elections, and I'll work to a constitution." And she's very clear that she has to write a new constitution and things like that. To that extent, like I said, it's very good. The very important thing, the positive thing, is that the young youth have faith in her. Right? And she's legal. After all, she's been the Chief Justice. So whatever she writes out, scripts out, logically should be good for the country. That's the happy part. But the other thing is, there's a legal vacuum. Who is there? There's a political vacuum at this point of time. Though the streets have overturned everyone, the politicians, can they make a comeback? The party structures are still there. China has still its interests. For example, this chap Jalanath Kanal. I mean, this fellow, his wife got burnt and all that, but he's still going and writing in Chinese media. In Chinese Mandarin media, he writes, about that being a color revolution. See the communist bent of mind. Okay, and then if you read the Chinese media, they talk of India as muddying the situation and all that, as if they have lost. They've lost. There's no doubt. So the communist hand is still there. And in this kind of a vacuum, they can come back. And communism thrives with poverty. That's the general thing. And there's a lot of poverty in Nepal at this point of time. That's one of the reasons why this has happened. So and communism also breeds the elites, the very super rich. That's true in China, and it's true here. After all those Nepo kids and all were, so
Nepal was following
that
the Chinese Communist Party model.
yeah, model. Oh, that is not gone. So there is no thing. The old leaders' whereabouts not known. Whether they'll come back, we don't know. There's a vacuum in stability. The only hope in Nepal, which is a great hope, is the army. The army has stood up,
Hmm.
and this has been acknowledged internationally. The army has stood up. It is the army which spoke, between uh, the president, spoke to the students and all that. And the army has not taken over the situation. The army has
Correct.
midwifed the situation to where it is. So this Mrs. Karki has the army behind it to help her through. And the good part in Nepal so far, which has not been so good in other places like Bangladesh, give you offset,
Hmm.
they promised elections by March 2026. They put a date. And you look at Bangladesh, where Yunus is continuing, he says April 2026 he'll do. And last year, sometime he did his coup. So
Right.
there's a big difference. The intent is good. The
Right.
intent is good. The thing is, how does Nepal and the lady, good lady, I call her the good lady, reach there? All that. And the problems are huge,
Hmm.
right?
Problems are
No
huge
money,
indeed.
problems are huge.
Yeah.
And the roots of the problem are there. There's monarchy, there is
Yeah.
still communism, the old parties are not gone. Are there going to be new parties? How much
Right.
will the Gen Z be politically organized?
Hmm.
He said it's good to have a revolution, but a revolution invariably eats its own children up.
Yes.
So will they, that is also a thing. So there are problems, but the intent is good. So, and I will put it here that look, India can help them a lot. India can help a lot by keeping away from it, helping them.
I was going to ask that to Advaita, but Advaita, this point that India's and Nepal's connections are historic. I mean, they're like, we call it the roti beti rishta that we have with Nepal. As Shankar mentioned, that Nepal is in a state of flux right now. It's gone in the past 17 years. It's gone from monarchy to communist rule to democracy, and now anarchy, which is now great. Fortunately, it's subsiding with Sushila Karki's appointment, and of course, she's got a huge task ahead of her. But how can India really help Nepal without appearing to interfere in Nepal's internal affairs? I mean, that's always a concern there. You see the the language of the protesters as well, the way they've been targeting Indian media. They're very unfortunate. They've been attacking Indian media personnel there in the streets, and which suggests that they're not very comfortable with India, doing the so-called interfering in Nepal's internal affairs. But how can India really help? We want to help, but as Shankar said, should we help by not helping at all?
I think India should stand by. Remember, India is the only country in the region that has consistently had democracy, has had democratic institutions, which have
Right.
worked for us, right? So we are
Right.
very uniquely placed in the region in terms of
Mm.
helping and being able to advise Nepal on the way forward. However,
Mm.
yes, there is a tendency for India's influence or to be viewed as interference, to be viewed as condescension. So that resentment, kind of, emerges if there's too much of a visible Indian presence in matters that concern Nepal. So I think it's important that we are there for them because they are our friends. We have long association with them. We share a common faith, which has been deeply challenged by the communists. So it is important that we recognize that there is an undercurrent of this resurgence also of faith,
Mm.
which has also pushed this kind of um, protest and outrage on the streets, because you can't kind of force people to disconnect from their culture and their heritage, which was also what was happening. This kind of, schooling of the mind to become
Right.
more Chinese-like and more communist and atheistic, and those,
Mhm.
which was an unnatural fit. So that was
Right.
also happening parallelly in the last couple of years. So I think India can help by being there, but not necessarily being omnipotent or
Right.
omnipresent. We don't
Right.
need to get into that battle that we need to offset China or we need to do this.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
Nepalis are anyway very connected to India. We have a lot in common. We have so many Nepalese living in India. There's, so much back and forth that goes on. So I don't think that the government at the government level necessarily needs to be very overt in anything it does. I just think it needs to be a supportive friend. You have by the way, she's the first woman who's ever held the position of prime minister in Nepal,
Right.
although it came
That's a
about
big
under these
achievement. Yes.
circumstances.
Right.
Well, I mean, the circumstances aren't great, but certainly she's a first, and she has an arduous task, up until March when they plan to hold elections. So I think India could also really help in ensuring that there is some sort of support and stability that is there, because it's not good for us also if Nepal gets into turmoil. We share a border with them, we share a very open border with them. So it's
Yes.
important that we're there from that perspective as well. So these are the things that I think we can do. I'm a little curious about the role of the army, because from what I've heard and seen and read, is that there were a lot of protesters in baklavas who were carrying government issued army, weapons that have been
Yes.
issued to the army. So there is a certain sentiment that maybe the army was not that passive. Maybe they
Right.
were on the streets and were also taking to protest. So I just want to know what General thinks about those kind
Yeah,
of
and it's
reports.
a good point. General Shankar, you believe the army was there in the protest? The
Uh,
India Today cover currently has one. I'm just looking at it. It has a protester holding a Indian ordnance factory manufactured assault rifle. So which leads to me to believe that this was no ordinary protest, and that wouldn't possibly belong to a soldier either. He was, in civies or possibly snatched. But your thoughts on this? Was the army literally involved in the protests? Were they involved?
Look, okay, now that you raised the question, I have to go back a little. I have to go back to the Maoist times, right? Uh, because there's a very serious issue which Advaita and you have raised. In the Maoist struggle, it happened for 10 years till 2001, 6,
Right,
96 to 2006. The army was battling the Maoists. They
right.
were at loggerheads with each other. And thereafter, some truce came out. And then, in between, Dipendra's, shootout happened where he wiped
Yeah,
out his whole
massacre of the
family. And,
brothers. Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And Gyanendra came, and Gyanendra didn't have the charisma to hold the monarchy to where it was, and he lost it. The Maoism was up on the rise, the Maoists, and the army was on one side. So there were a lot of fractures within Nepal. And
Hmm.
finally, the monarchy was abolished, and elected representation came through the Maoists who won. And the Maoists were putting a lot of pressure on the army to take in their cadres.
Right.
And the army refused. The army consistently said, "We'll not take them in." Because if
Hmm.
they come in, this will become a political army,
Yes.
not a political army. And I've interacted with a lot of army chiefs. In fact, one of the army chiefs and I did NDC also together.
Right.
The Nepalese army is clear about one thing. In fact, one officer later he retired as a general. We did YOs also together. He was long back. I'm now going back to the 70s, right? Young officers. YOs is young officers course.
Right.
So the army has been conscious of two, three things. One is it didn't want to be seen as being political at all. Zero. It didn't have any it had very clear ideas that they didn't want to be political. The second thing about the Nepalese army was it always felt, this is my view, it might be Some people might have different views about it, but I always felt that the Nepalese army felt more akin to India than the China than Chinese. Okay, and this is a issue of a problem with them even when King Mahendra was in on the throne, because Mahendra was the one who started going towards China after the 62 defeat.
Hmm.
When till then they were completely invested into India, and then later on he also started playing the Pakistan card through East Pakistan. It was only after 71. So it is not as if the monarchy was completely for India and the people were complete for India. There were some strains always this thing, but the army was largely towards India, and they were quite uncomfortable with what was happening with China. Right? That be that as it may, they remained largely apolitical. When this issue with the Gen Z happened and all that, I think the army also might have at some level. I mean, I know I'm speculating. Might have at some level said, look, these communists are not going to take us anywhere. Okay. And like I'm sorry, I'm getting back to the thing of constitution. That constitution and the election process always ensured instability. I mean, you have to understand this is a fundamental thing about Nepal. 275 seats, 165 gets on first past the post system, 110 on proportional representation. No party gets the power. So what? As a result, in 14 years they had 17 prime ministers or something like that. Or
Right.
17 years they had 14 prime ministers. If a prime minister changing 1 year, 3 months almost, that was the average thing, right? Some being completely towards China and
I know.
everything. Yeah. So, and the natural affinity again being towards India. Natural affinity is towards India, Hindu kingdom and all that. So that those this is a situation which had no end, completely
Hmm.
unbearable. People were disparity going, everything. So if the army has silently or quietly, supported the Gen Z, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
Hmm.
I mean,
Right.
just to give you why, let me also. Do you know that the chief of Nepalese army is an honorary general of India, and our army
Yes.
chief is an honorary general of Nepal? That's the
Vice versa.
connect.
Yes.
Vice
The
versa.
only such yeah.
When my course mate General KC Thapa became the chief of Nepalese army, he came. I was there in Ashoka Hall to see him becoming the general of, so that connect
Indian
is
Army.
there. So the thing is this, it factors. Then the issue of Nepalese serving in the Gorkhas, right? That is
I was
also
going
a
to ask
huge
you
fact.
that,
Yeah,
Shankar.
we'll
That's
come to
also
that.
one
That's
which
a
you.
So all these factors make me believe at some level the army had a connect with the Gen Z, and New York Times has come out with a nice report on this, that
Hmm.
the army was the last institution standing, and they were the ones who were talking. In fact, the army is the one who's facilitated this arrangement. Without the army, you can't negate a complete constitution and a parliament
Yeah.
and get these people in, right? It's not simple. So if you think that the army is out of the equation, no, I will say it is the army is probably turned out to be the architect of the equation post the first day. The foolish
Right.
thing was these people killed 20. Now it's 35 people who've been killed there, and
Right.
so tempers went up. The whole thing blew up, and when the whole thing blew up, the army stepped in silently and did the thing, and they brought him. And the next thing is this connect of the army, Indian army with Nepal. Yeah, I mean, I think what we have done with the Agniveer is absolutely stupid. Let me be put it up front. So
Well,
this entire Agniveer scheme, has ensured that the Nepalese are no more in Indian army. They're not there because Nepal government didn't accept this scheme at all because it's completely detrimental to them. So, and we've lost a listening post. Just think, Even if you are paying 10,000, I'm just giving you a ballpark figure, 10,000 people pension. You had 10,000 families in Nepal get drawing pension from India, and
Hmm.
which you multiply it and all that. I would put a factor of 100. A whole lot of people who were in the countryside. All these people were in countryside. They had also gone into politics. So you had influence. That influence will go now. They were your, actual silent sentries against the Maoists and the
Right.
Chinese. Chinese. You lost that. So I think if India has to do anything proactively, right, to retrieve the situation back to normal, to old days or all that, is you have to reform the Agniveer scheme, get these boys into our Gorkha regiments. It
Right.
also eases their issue of, remuneration and economy and all that.
Right.
There are a lot of
Right.
things which we can do.
Right. But
One
Jan
way
Shankar,
is
yeah.
we'll get back.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
please.
Please go.
No, no,
No,
go ahead.
the point of Gorkha recruitments literally coming to a halt. That's a point that's well made, and I think what the thought process on the Indian side is that you're going to have only Nepal Indian Gorkhas recruited into the Gorkha regiment. Uh, but in the past, has this been of great use to India? The fact that, like you mentioned, they're your eyes and ears in Nepal. This pro-India constituency who are dependent on you because of salaries and pensions and all. Has that actually really helped? Has it translated into political benefits or some kind of a strategic leverage or something? I don't want to sound very mercenary in this thing, because I know Nepal is a friend and all that. But is there any evidence of this having been extremely beneficial to India in the last 20 or 30 years, especially when that period of intense political uncertainty was on?
I think it's huge. What we had was a absolutely big firewall against
Right.
the Maoists and spread in the countryside, right?
Hmm.
And you see, you have to see the dependency which is there. It is not just that 1,000 Gorkhas are getting recruited every year into the
Yeah.
Gorkha units. It's not that. It's that plus with these people, their friends, yeah, will come to India, get employment, and you build linkages, right? You build trust. Then all these people, you pay pension to them. Now it's a namak ki rishta. Dhoti beti
Yeah.
ka rishta hi nahi hai. Dhoti
Yeah.
beti ka rishta was with the Madesis.
Right.
But you had a deep connect with the Gorkhas, the Limbus, all those people, who are up there, Bahadur, Sher, Tapas,
Yeah, the hill people. Yes.
hill tribes. They had, namak ka rishta hai. And if you served with Gorkhas, you'll understand this namak ka rishta is very tight, incidentally. And you had people there, you come here for reunions and get-togethers
Yeah.
and getting their children into the army because they had that quota of, all that. So those things are invaluable. These are hidden, I wouldn't say hidden links, these are strong subterranean links. And you ask any Gorkha officer, he cries about these things.
Right.
When and the Gorkhas had, if you see Gorkha officers, they had strong links with these people. Gorkhas
Yeah.
officers would go on leave during normal time and go and spend time with their men, retired guys and all in in the villages, partake in festivals there, marriages. They people heard of my own friends going to Nepal. क्यों जा रहा है यार, मेरा सुधार मेजर का बेटी का शादी हो रहा है. So that's a deep connect. Koi, I mean, look at it. No Chinese will come to Nepal because the Subhadar Major's daughter is getting married. See
Right.
that advantage. That advantage is a permanent advantage we had. And why? Why is this advantage very important for us? Please understand. Nepal sits on our heartland. I keep saying Nepal.
Hmm.
Chinese want to build railroads. They want to build everything. They're developing Lumbini to claim Buddhism. All these nonsense. If tomorrow the PLA turns up on Terai border, what will you do? You can keep
Right.
sitting in eastern Ladakh and you can keep sitting in the eastern sector with all your force. Incidentally, there's one chap called Victor Gao. Sorry,
Yes.
Advaita, I'm taking up your time. I'll make up this I want you to get her view also
No,
on what
I
I'm trying
asked
to
you
say.
the question, so it's okay.
Right. There's a chap called Victor Gao, who is a Chinese writer. He kept coming up, recently in all our TV channels for, when this SEO meet was held and all that. Now, you know what he's written? He says, look, we know, and he's written just about 2 weeks back. We know that Eastern Ladakh, they are very strong. We also know that in East India, they're very strong. The Indian army is very strong. But where is the Indian army weak? Where is India weak? It is weak in the Ganges belt. Ganges belt. He talks of the Ganges line. He says, why is it weak in the Ganges line? Because there's nothing against Nepal. So
Right.
what should we do? We should appear on the Nepal border and come into Nepal. And that is
Right.
why we are building roads. That way we are building this. So their long distance
They're
thinking,
thinking
vision
decades ahead.
is
I
good.
want to ask Advaita this, General Shankar, this point that you made, the
Yeah.
fact that the Chinese are sitting atop the Ganges belt, and that is actually, an area of big concern. In the past also, Advaita, we've been hearing the fact that the Chinese plan to recruit Gorkhas into the PLA or into the border guarding force or something like that. But, that's of great concern to India. If China now appears in the Nepal region, which is just adjacent to India's Indo-Gangetic plain. That's a fresh area of concern. I mean, how should India play this in your mind, to your mind, Advaita?
Well, I think, I'm, of course, very pro Nepal. I have very fond memories and affection. I think we need to treat Nepal with respect.
Right.
I'm going to reiterate that, this is a country that is a democracy now that's coming into its own. I think we have to treat them as equals. We cannot talk down to Nepal. There has been a tendency to do that, uh, and that has to change. They're self respecting people, like people of any nation are. And it's very important. Yes, a lot of people from Nepal come and take up menial jobs in India and things of that sort. And there has been a culture to mimify that, or mock that in our films, in our popular culture, create stereotypes. All those kind of things exist on a social level as well, which do seed a certain level of resentment because you're challenging a people's self-respect. So I think it's very important that we deal with Nepal as a valuable neighbor, as a good friend, as someone who we share religious, cultural ties with, which are very profound. And I would say, Nepal is a country that didn't actually go through any kind of colonialism or
Yes.
foreign rule in that sense. So when they talk about Chinese influence or taking over, I think in the Nepali people themselves there is a lot of resilience and toughness, and they are martial. They can fight
Right.
it out. We see it with the Gorkhas. So they would not take kindly to even a China imposing what would be a very alien culture compared to
Mm.
India on them. So I think the people would resist that instinctively because they are proud, they are keen to establish their own way, they want a path forward. They've been blessed with tremendous resources. They need to find a way to capitalize those. And India must play a supportive role because of our long association, our cultural similarities. And I think we can play a very emotional, positive role in this country's development going down the way. Why can't we have conversations of what Nepal will be 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and how
Right.
we can partner them on that journey to greater self reliance? I think that's
Yes.
really the role we have to play as the largest democracy in this region, as the longest surviving democracy in this region. I think there's a lot that we can share with them, but we have to do it as friends, not as people who are lecturing to them. And that's
Right.
what puts the Nepalese off when it comes to Indians, is that we have a tendency to say, I told you so, or
Yeah.
listen to me, I know how it's done. No, that's not how you deal with sovereign nations. Even if they're smaller than you, even if they may be dependent on you, you have to maintain their self respect. So I think there needs to be a realignment of our engagement. We need to understand them a lot better and not just view them through stereotypes. And we need to be true partners because they are very connected to us. They are very influenced by us in many ways. Be it soft culture, be it other things, our army, like General Shankar said. So even in institutions, even people to people, there is a lot of exchange and influence. Now,
Sure.
how do we leverage that? Do we leverage that by becoming hectoring and big brotherly, or do we leverage that by saying, look, we've walked this path, so maybe we can talk to you about it in a way that the Chinese can't, because the Chinese bring a totally different form of governance.
Yes.
Governance that I personally don't think the Nepalese will ever accept. They're more likely to accept a constitutional monarchy, because there was that certain reverence, and have a parliament alongside that, than to actually accept communism. And that should
Mm.
make us feel very happy.
Right. No, good, important point there that you've raised, Advaita. And the fact is that the monarchy that whispers about the monarch returning. There was a lot of nostalgia, some might call it, when Gyanendra came back, and they were actually kind of longing for the stability that the monarchy brought in. But General Shankar, the point that Advaita made about the constitutional monarchy, which is what was there a couple of decades ago. You had the monarch like the president, but like an executive president who had a prime minister, elected prime minister. You see that as an option, as a solution to Nepal's problems. Because, like you said, if you have 12 prime ministers in 12 years, what kind of foundations can you build for a country? It's like building a building, making a building on a foundation of sand. There's no way any reform, any political process or industrial activity can take place in such uncertainty. You see that constitutional monarchy as being a possible alternative for Nepal, stability in Nepal?
I don't think so. Let me be very
No.
honest about it. No. Why? If there was a constitutional monarchy feasible, that should have been already in play by now.
Right, right.
That shut out. They got a chief justice in, right? And so the constitutional monarchy is no going back. Some people earned for monarchy because they wanted to get rid of this Maoist yoke. That's about
Right.
all. Because that's not the alternative. The alternative is balanced democracy, not the imbalanced democracy which they have. And I think my own reading of the situation, from what I've heard this lady speak in 3-4 different channels, is
Yes.
that she's balanced. She's very clear that she wants to put in a balanced constitution in place,
Right.
right? And I think we should help them to do that. That's what Advaita said is very important. Let them do what they want to do and come out with their own solution, right? I'll put it, and that's another way of looking at it is you give them space to do what they want to do. Second, let them stew in their own juices to cook their own food, so that they come up with their own thing. Leave them, let them do. Help them build institutions. That is more important. See,
Right.
help them build institutions. I'll go on a little tangent and get back to Nepal. What is the tangent? All around us, whether you call Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, there's a ring of instability around us. Look, Pakistan is not far away. वहाँ domino effect हो सकता है. We can talk about it in the end, right? And then you look at Thailand, you look at Indonesia, you look at Maldives. They're all completely, you are in a double ring of instability. Regime changes, corruption. Malaysia also, that prime minister is under the
Right.
cosh. Okay, you look at Thailand,
Island,
the
yes.
previous, and that lady has been sacked, Shinwatra,
The prime
his
minister.
daughter, Pekton. So Thailand is in a problem. Indonesia, a lot of what happened in Indonesia has found resonance here. Okay, the trigger actually was pulled in Indonesia and it happened here. So you find all this. So in this, India is the only stable factor in all this. So this stability we should transfer to Nepal. How do you
Right.
transfer the stability to Nepal? By being away from it is one way of looking at it, but giving them economic assurances, giving them people, they think, okay, don't worry, we'll help you economically so that you can be yourself politically stable. Because China won't help them. That they're very clear. I agree with what Advaita says that the Chinese influence on the Nepalese will be very minimal on many of these issues. So the opportunity is here, right? Opportunity is here for us to ensure that Nepal is stable. A stable Nepal is a stable India. Let me also put it. So, okay. So you can give them economic opportunities. For example, you can tell them, look, we'll build the dams in your area. You give us the power. You don't need the power. We'll take the power, and you go into a positive cycle of infrastructure development and lifelong power purchase from them. Their economy will go up. So positive things help build other institutions. Very important. Strengthen the army, strengthen the courts, justice systems, fundamental things of movement of people here and there, right? Why don't you take up infrastructure projects which help them, right? Then they have this there's a huge section of Nepalese who are anti-India. Let's face facts. I mean, a lot of our neighbors are anti-India. Like a whole lot of people are anti-USA, but still go to USA. So you have to start thinking. You shouldn't be, you shouldn't be overbearing on them. So help them with their law and order, education. See, look at Sikkim. After all, if you go back into the 70s, Sikkim was a foreign country when we assimilated it in 75.
Yeah.
Right? What is Sikkim
50 years
today?
ago.
Yeah, what is Sikkim today? You go to Sikkim, you have education systems, you have hospitals, you have grassroots democracy, and I've been seeing Sikkim from 77 to now. Things have changed drastically in Sikkim. Can you give them some Sikkim model? I mean, we don't. It can't be exact Sikkim model because Sikkim is a state of ours. Okay.
Right.
But definitely there are a lot of similarities. The people are the same, no? Hill tribes. So there's a lot of things you can pick from what we did with Sikkim. How we've developed North Bengal, Darjeeling area. How we've developed it. Those Bhutan, how we've dealt with Bhutan. Now, can you transfer some of the best things into this?
Right.
And do it unobtrusively without making a big show about it, right? Can you help them overcome? You see, another thing, in Nepal there's this ethnic divide between Madhesis and the hill people. Can you help them get over it? Because normally we do the opposite. The normal tendency is that because people in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh are they have kinship with the Madhesis, we try and promote them against their own hill people. Can you say, look, yeah, be friends with each other, and we'll help you be friends with each other? So there are a lot of bridges which we can help. Can you give them employment opportunities besides being normal labor or thing? Can you help a service industry from Nepal into India?
Yeah.
Right? Because services are very important for them because they don't have any other industry really. So and they have the human capability, So the services industry is something very good. What about the showbiz? A lot of jobs. So can you help them there? I think we can play a huge part. How we have helped Tibetans? You go interact with Tibetans in India. Okay, the Tibetans from Mysore are more happy eating, idli sambar and dosa and vada rather than eating tupkas. I'm not having interacted with them. Right? At times they are better than you in navigating in Bangalore than you and I are. Okay, so that kind of why can't we unleash this soft power on them?
Right.
Without being obtrusive, soft, really soft.
Yeah, soft and out of sight. Like Advaita was also saying that you have to do it in a way that doesn't appear that you're playing Big Brother and you're trying to muscle in on a smaller neighbor. Advaita, there's a lot that General Shankar said that kind of resonates with the fact that it is at the end of the day, it's also about institutions and how do you build institutions. In Nepal, a country that's so fragile. It's like they talk about the Himalayan ecosystem being fragile, and you have institutions in Nepal that are so fragile because they've not had the chance to develop. How can India do this? Closing comments, I think, before we take some questions. Then Shankar, I
Yeah.
can see already scanning
Lot
the
of-
thing for questions.
yeah.
But Advaita,
Last week we were discussing Indian tech and how it's going to be impacted by the US. And I said
yes,
then that, Indian tech is really the backbone of Silicon Valley. So
yes,
I think we should really, I think we are recognized the world over for our talent when it comes to tech, for our intellectual prowess when it comes to tech, and we are sort of a shining light. And in when it comes to tech in this region, even in Pakistan, if you watch a lot of their vlogs and things like that, they always talk about how India is so tech savvy, so tech advanced, etc., etc. I think we have to help Nepal in this way to get future ready in a time when AI seems to be taking over everything. Maybe I'm a little
yes,
more paranoid because I'm a writer and AI can write everything, but it's slowly creeping into our lives in a way wherein we have to be ready for AI because AI is already here. So I think partnering Nepal on these kind of journeys, which are future forward, which we don't have a language barrier with them, we understand each other very well, is really important. I think we need to partner with them in these future forward industries, where in Nepal, because it does have certain limitations because of geography and things of that sort. So certain kind of industries, certain kind of mass employment cannot necessarily be set up there, being a hill country.
yeah,
Uh, and having travel and logistical issues and all of that. But something like tech doesn't need roads, doesn't need any of that. And that's an area in which we can really collaborate with them and help them move ahead and move forward in a very progressive and empowering way. I think that's really important. So we need to step in for these issues so that they realize, engaging with China beyond point means you're going to be indebted to them and debt ridden to them for the next like 3 generations, if not
right.
more.
They'll
So
do a Hambantota to you, right?
correct. So Nepal, I know, does not want to be anyone's vassal state, not
Yes.
India's, not China's, but do they understand, how their politicians have been selling them out to China?
Mm.
All those Louis Vuittons and all those bags and all those nepo babies,
Yeah,
where's that lifestyle coming from? So
right.
I think
Absolutely.
they need to understand what's being done to them, and we need to, on the other hand, partner them on this journey, this tech journey, this future ready journey. And
Absolutely.
if we do that, we're in the right place with them, frankly.
Right, absolutely. And maybe Advaita, you could get your Bollywood friends to go back to Nepal. I mean, why must we have only one Manisha Koirala? I'm sure there's a lot of other
No.
talent there, that can come into Bollywood and vice versa. We should actually make a lot of, Indo-Nepalese movies for all you know. But Jan Shankar, absolutely
Let's
fascinating
take some
discussion.
questions.
Let's take some questions.
Yeah. First, Advaita is 100% correct. Sikkim and Darjeeling can have a very important role in bridging this gap and
Yes.
improving relations. I think that's very important. Now, there's an interesting question. We'll go on a tangent before we come to normal questions. What are the chances of Pakistan doing this against their politicians and their army? Your views. Yeah, Sandeep, take
Right.
a shot.
General Shankar, you planted the seed. I saw that.
No, I
You
didn't.
want this to happen in Pakistan. You want General
No,
Munir to flee the country. No, but I think what has happened it's a good question. Firstly, and I think that Munir is sitting on a volcano, and I think he knows this, and possibly he would be the most worried person around in the Indian subcontinent. While we are looking at it with a lot of concern, Nepal is on fire, it's on our thing. The Chinese could land up here. Munir is looking behind his back and over his
bad.
shoulder. How many of these Gen Zs are lining up outside his door? Because we saw that with the protests in Pakistan a couple of years back. The kind of, for the first time, the public vented their anger against the army. And this is in a manner that it didn't happen even after 1971 when they lost half their country. the army still managed to salvage, the whole thing and, come out on top, and they capture power once again. After Ayub had retreated, after Yahya had retreated, you had Zia who come out in 76, 77. So Munir would be a very, very worried person. And I think, at this point, I'm just blue sky thinking here. He's an unpredictable guy. You can predict him only with his unpredictability. He'd be looking at some way of getting the people in Pakistan to vent a bit, trying to make some concessions to Imran Khan, because Imran Khan, despite all that Munir has done, remains one of the most popular people, the most popular politician in Pakistan, both overseas and in India, and once in Pakistan. And once this entire thing of that security crisis that he created, that begins to settle down a bit in Pakistan. Once the economic issues start biting, a lot of questions are going to be asked by the Pakistanis. They say, look, the Nepalis have done this. They have driven their rulers out. It's happened in Sri Lanka. It's happened in Bangladesh. Why can't we do it here in Pakistan? Why is the military sitting and consuming so many of our resources? They gave themselves a 20% budget hike, a defense budget hike. And so Munir would be very worried, and I actually see the possibility of this happening in Pakistan as well, because it's happened there just 2 years back. He's managed to put a lid on it, but there's only so much that you can do to keep that lid down, and it can just explode once again.
Yeah, Advaita, your views on this? I think this is a very interesting thing because, like I said, put it in the context that it's not only the inner ring around India, but the outer ring around India is also in turmoil. And if you go a little further, there are many other places which are being touched by this contagion. Look at France, what's happening. Look at the kind of discontent which is there in an advanced society like UK, even Germany. And of course, the greatest of them all, America, is in its own problems. There's people's problems coming up. So your take, Advaita.
I think social media is a whole new factor in this equation, right? Because earlier, when you had a town square, it was restricted to your immediate periphery. It could be your village or your cafeteria at work or college, or it was or your neighborhood. That was basically your venting zone, and that was where your ideas resonated or were rejected. But it was limited to that. Now suddenly with social media, what's happening is that you can vent to the world. And another thing that social media is designed to do, and is also, the algorithms are really designed to do that, is to feed your confirmation bias. So if you have a certain viewpoint, you will see that getting imposed and reimposed. As we become more isolated and the lesser we step out and have actual one-on-one engagements, we create these tribes, these digital tribes that reinforce all our ideas and think like us. So we started building these communities online. Are we always able to mobilize those communities in the real world? Not necessarily. A lot of times people will say yes, for example, to a book event, and you turn up at the book event and there are 20 people there when 1,000 people said yes on Facebook. So, mobilizing people in the real world is also difficult. But certainly you can mobilize groupthink, you can create an environment, you can do all of those things that can get people moving, even those who are not directly in touch with you, but who are influenced by this kind of ideas that are floating around in the ether. And I think that is a real risk that everyone faces, even in America right now with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The governor of Utah actually said this. He says, get off social media. Social media is dangerous. He said it simply and in a straightforward way. I think it's something that we all understand. But you have a generation coming of age and becoming more active in the public sphere who are digital natives. So to them, it's an extension of their arm. It's not like something they've adopted, something they were born with. So to disconnect them from that is going to be problematic. And to control the ill effects of this is something that societies, that governments need to have very serious conversations about, because this kind of flashpoint can happen anywhere, in any situation. And I think, in a democracy, we're a little more insulated because we have a belief in certain institutions. It may vary from time to time. Sometimes we may think the justice system is great, and sometimes we may think it's totally failed us. But for the most part, we respect that it exists. I think the real risk really lies for dictatorial countries like Pakistan, where they have oppressed people for so long, who have lost complete belief in any of their institutions, whose army is ready to pick up the gun on them and shoot them at sight if they have to, and have done so in the past. So that is something that countries like Pakistan need to be very worried about, I guess, their leadership, because they have a restive population. They have a very important leader, a very popular leader like Imran Khan, who has captured the public's imagination, who's captured their heart also by being cricket captain. And cricket is frankly the only one of the only things that the Pakistanis can actually be proud of achieving on a global stage. So they have very little to be proud of. And the man who led them to that kind of victory and pride is now in solitary confinement in the most inhumane conditions. So that is also simmering underneath. Could the army do something to threaten Imran Khan's life because he is such a rival? I think it's possible. In fact, his sons are going from pillar to post, saying that we don't feel like our father will survive. Now, just for a minute, if something like that happens, can you imagine what will happen in Pakistan?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anarchy.
Yeah,
There will
I think there's a follow-up question we should take, because
Yes.
the thing is to me, but I'd like your views on it. What do you think of foul play allegations? Seems organic to me, as there was a lot of pent-up frustrations. You know, the same
Advaita.
thing. Look at the larger picture. Don't look at Nepal, because I want to get out of Nepal at this point of time, because it affects us as much as it affects Pakistan, and it's affecting all of others. And today, what seems very good within India could be very bad tomorrow. So I'd like your views. I think we can conclude with this, with your
Yeah.
views on these issues. Advaita, please. You want me to put it
Right.
up again? Yeah.
I remember in the 80s, because of the Cold War, Pakistan was very firmly in the American camp at that time. And India was perceived to, although we said we were the leader of the non-aligned movement, we were perceived to be very close to the Soviets. And that was the way it was. So Nepal then became kind of a holding ground. And here is where cross nationalities interacted and cross pollinated. And there were a lot of reasons to go to Nepal. You want to climb Everest, so you're going there as a mountaineer. And these were different times, but there were a lot of reasons to be in Nepal and to spend time there and really cross pollinate like this. So Nepal is always seen a very active kind of, I guess, spooks underground, uh, you know, transnational interaction. So I'm not of the sort who would say that, oh, there could never be a foreign hand behind these protests. I don't, I think they could very well be. I don't see that as being totally out of the question. I have for a long time felt that there has been uh, an attempt in many ways to foment this kind of discontent in India as well, through
Right.
different protests, through different
Yes.
things that we are all aware of. And I think there could very well be, and it could, part of it could be because of Nepal's closeness to China, and the fact that its leaders, political leaders, were essentially bought over by China. Let's be straight about it.
Hmm.
And those kids were flaunting their lifestyle because they were making that kind of money. And India was watching. Remember, Oli is probably the only Nepalese prime minister who's never visited India, and he's been in
Yes.
office for a while, which
Yes.
is rather stunning if you think about it. So there are a lot of things that were going on in Nepal which were not positive for democratically inclined governments. Let me say that.
Right. Right, absolutely. No, in fact, Advaita, Oli was to visit India just this month, and it
Shortly.
just happened that yes, in the 18th or so, but now it's not going to happen. We have a new prime minister there. But Jan Shankar, this point about social media being manipulated, that's a big, big fear. I mean, you, of course, you know about it far more in greater depth and detail. You've studied that. The weaponization of social media and the fact that foreign intelligence agencies have been known to use it, thanks to Edward Snowden and revelations that he's made. You know about how this is one of the most powerful tools of controlling masses of people to to do mass sentiment analysis and then manipulate stuff. So that's why I'm also a bit concerned about social media platforms, particularly ones that do not reside within the boundaries of your country. And that is something that we've also flagged on our discussions in the past, where the Prime Minister has spoken about the need for Atmanirbhar social media platforms. Because just as Advaita said, I mean, the reach of social media today, it has dwarfed anything that we have known in our lifetimes. It's almost as big as the internet. It's so ubiquitous. Media has been dwarfed. Social media is everywhere now. It's literally like the air that you breathe. And if somebody has control over this, has made the algorithms, like you said, Advaita, to control this and to create these digital communities, then we are in for a bit of a rough ride ahead, particularly when you don't have access to the algorithms, to the source codes, you don't have access to the information, you're not controlling anything, you don't even have your own platforms, right? And that is a big, big vulnerability. And I do hope, those in the government of India are looking at this very seriously, because the world would be very different from what you think it is. We think it's the Ramayana, it's all good, and a virtuous son, virtuous husband, good and evil in black and white. But the world out there is actually like the Mahabharata. It's pretty dark, and it's dangerous. But that's my
Yeah.
point about social media.
Yeah, I go completely with you. I'll just give a counterpoint and leave it to thinking. America controls virtually a whole chunk of social media all over the world, source code, algorithms, everything.
Yes.
Yet you find that in America, the debate comes up that Russia has interfered in their elections.
Right.
Okay? Right.
Yeah.
The second thing, we all think China is an impervious society and firewall, wall. Yet Xi Jinping goes to Kazakhstan and says there could be a color revolution possible. 2 years back, he had to rush back at the, avoiding one last event. He had to rush back to China. Something happened. And there have been other occasions also. So I would say the danger is beyond controlling algorithms. Algorithms could be controlled, but if you know how to play the algorithms, you can control. It's all a thing of cognitive space. How you control the cognitive space is very important. And there are many layers to this. We can talk of this some other day. But the fact is that social media is a huge weapon.
Right.
And social media plus frustrations is explosive material. And if this explosive material gets to the critical mass, like it happened in Nepal, like it happened in Bangladesh, like it happened in Sri Lanka, and it could happen in Pakistan tomorrow, well, we are in for a long haul
Right. We're in for a
of a
whole
different kind.
Yes. On that note, Jan Shankar, I think we should wrap up today's discussion. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. It's such a great discussion, and actually leads on to what we could potentially discuss next Saturday. This weaponization of social media. It's something that we've been talking about a lot, but we've not really spoken about in great detail. But I think we should do that possibly next Saturday. We could talk about the weaponization of social media. What we really need to do. Watch out, rules of the road, because it is a double-edged sword. You can't do without it. There are a lot of benefits that it gives you. You just have to make sure that it has guardrails on while you're using it. And like correctly mentioned, Jan Shankar, the US is wrestling with that, and shooters running berserk and being influenced by this. It's polarized the debate there very sharply in the US as well. But that's a discussion we're going to have very soon. And for all of you watching us there, I want to thank you for your time, your attention, and do keep those questions coming in. We'll be back very soon on another episode with General Shankar and Advaita Kala. Thank you for watching.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day.